Welcome, everyone. It's Career Happy Hour. I'm Andrew Beach, Executive Coach. I'm a teacher of self-education. I help professionals like you communicate value to find great opportunities faster, whether you're working or not. It's through a pragmatic process of branding, planning, and effective networking. If that's something you need, a little confident communication today, then you're in the right place. Today is Career Happy Hour, and what that means is we have the opportunity, all of us, to share something we might be wrestling with. I'm just closing out some of my applications here because they're causing a lag in the video. My apologies. I'm joining you today by YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, as well as live streaming on my mobile device on Instagram. So regardless of where you're joining from, welcome. It's good to see you. Good to have you. If you want to grab the comments box and just tell me where you're joining from, I'd appreciate that. And you know, it's a good place actually, because most of us are here from a professional perspective. We really appreciate it when we can connect on a professional platform like LinkedIn. So whether you're on any one of these channels, is likely you have a LinkedIn profile. And if you don't, certainly we'd encourage you to get one. And then you can share it in sessions like we have here today. And so please put your LinkedIn profile in the chat, or just say hello and make yourself open to possibility. This is a community that we're building here. It's not just me speaking every Friday, although I think some people get value out of that. Let's go over here. I've been having some issues with the quality of the stream, so I just want to make sure they're coming across well for you. And if the stream quality is good for you, please let me know in the comments as well. I've been having some issues with that, so we're trying to rectify as best we can. What I'm seeing here and what I'm seeing on some of these other channels isn't as good as I'd like it to be. So we may need to upgrade our infrastructure here on Career Happy Hour. If you'd like to donate to that effort, of course, I'm open to hearing from you. So go ahead and put your LinkedIn profile in the chat. Happy to answer. Certainly, if you have any questions, put those in the comments, whether it's related to the topic today, which we'll get to in a minute. You can use the hashtag Career Happy Hour. And you might be thinking, well, what kind of questions can I put here? Well, anything related to your career, anything about growing your career, or interviewing, or networking, or planning, that sort of thing. I'm 100% open to answering real questions for you during this session. Now, the other thing that helps us get a broader audience for this broadcast is for you to share it out. So share it. Caring is sharing. And that means share out to anyone you think might find interest in this. It doesn't have to be public. You could send this in a private message, and that would be perfectly acceptable. That said, if you want live coaching, there is a link in the description, regardless of which platform you're joining from. I think there is a capability to do that on Instagram. I'm not sure how to do that, but certainly we can make an effort to do that. And if you want to do that instead of putting a public question out there, you can do that with Restream. You can come into the back end here, just put in the name anonymous, and put your questions in the private chat, and I'm happy to answer them there. So I was teaching in front of, I don't know, a group of probably about 30 executives that were in an interviewing session. And in this interviewing session, there was a question that I honestly didn't have time to answer it because it was such a big question. And that question was, Andrew, how should I prepare for an interview with the CEO of a company? The CEO. So let me put that in the caption just so we could capture that. So how to interview. Let me make sure interview with the CEO. Their very next interview was with the CEO. And so the big question we have today, and you can give your answers in the chat as well. I'm going to go through some concepts here that, honestly, I don't think are unique to interviewing with CEOs. It just means you might need to take some extra time, energy, and effort to position yourself properly with the CEO, and not having talked to this person in advance of that session, I didn't know what the context was of that situation, because interviewing with the CEO, if it's a sole proprietor, it's not a big deal. Okay. You've got one person in that company. Maybe they have some contractors. It's just like interviewing with a hiring manager. It's really not that much different. However, if this is an interview with a CEO and you've already been through 2 or 3 or 4 rounds of interviews, and this is for maybe a leadership role, then this is cultural alignment and a meet and greet, and making sure that things are copacetic, because this may be the person that actually has their signature on your check. And even though that may be a bigger organization than a sole proprietor, it's also not an interview with the hiring manager. This is often in the later stages of an interview process, where you might be having to meet with an executive leader inside the organization. Now, that said, there's another level of interviews for board level positions. So if this is a board level position, the meeting with the CEO might actually be an initial and ongoing conversation, as well as with the executive leadership team. That means that you also may have to go and present in front of a handful, if not all, of the board of directors, depending on the hiring process. So that the answer to this question could be all over the board. I want to cover some universal thoughts or ideas about what you can do if you have a really important interview like this, as if you were going to meet the CEO for that interview. So that's the first part, is knowing which kind of interview you're in. Is this an executive checkbox interview, right? Where they're just trying to see cultural alignment and make sure that they can, see that you're fitting into the organization? Or is this really a hiring manager for you? Would you be direct reporting to the CEO? So knowing that kind of in advance is certainly helpful. But the first thing I always encourage people to do is, regardless of who you're meeting at the interview, know what kind of interview it is. That's the very first thing to ask. Is this a panel interview? Is it just me and the CEO? Is it over lunch or breakfast? Is it a coffee chat? Give me some more context here on how this particular person likes to interview and what is the process for that. So first of all, know what interview you're getting into. You don't want any surprises. And I have had candidates that I've coached, executives, people in not so low levels, that got interviews that were really odd. It was there was one, I think it was for a government job, where they had all the candidates in the room at the same time with a panel of people. It was really bizarre. And so you can't assume anything. You have to ask the recruitment coordinator, hey, tell me about this interview. What is the structure? Will we be meeting in an office or on Zoom? Is this more of a coffee chat, or is this a more serious type of interview? And I don't think you know that unless you ask. So ask. It's okay to ask in advance of the interview, what does it look like? We can't just assume, oh my gosh, I've got an interview with the CEO. I'm so excited. And then we're so excited we miss taking that step to confirm exactly what that is. And then the next thing I really encourage people to do is build a dossier. Now, by dossier, that may sound kind of, spy-ish, right? I'm a spy trying to spy on something. That's not what that means at all. I can assume that if you're going to interview with an organization, that they have your resume, they have your LinkedIn profile, they have some notes maybe from the recruiter in terms of your participation in the interviews. They have your references. They may have already checked those. They may have a background check if you've authorized that. The company is building a database of information on you. So the question is, do you have the right to collect a database of application on anyone that you're interviewing with at this organization? The answer is yes, you have that. You have that capability. So yes, you could do a Google search for this person's name. You could do a LinkedIn search to see what they're posting, see what their profile says, get a feel for who they are. Maybe you look at press releases. You look at their other social networks. It's not just LinkedIn. They may have a presence on LinkedIn, but they don't spend much time there. Maybe they're on, like our friends on Instagram here. Maybe they're on Instagram most of the time. I don't know. That means you need to look at all their different social networks if you can find and it's accessible and open to you to see. Look at all their different social networks, including a lot of times with the CEO, you might find they have a Twitter presence. So build a dossier. What do I want in this dossier? Who is this person? What do they like? How did they grow up? What is their career path? What is some of their strategic things? Do they have YouTube videos presented about them? Is there any public information that you can garner that's current? And you can access a lot of news sources for that. Google News, of course, but there's also paid news services that you can get that information. So that's the dossier on the person. And there's all kinds of other research I'd encourage you to do up at the front end. And that would include things like compensation and benefits, and know all of these different things, because you never know when any conversation, even with the CEO, is going to devolve into some kind of a financial discussion. So be ready for that and do the research on the company. Where are you in the hiring process? If you can get that from the recruitment folks. Sometimes you're at the beginning, early stages of the process. Sometimes you're in the middle. Sometimes you're closer to the end. So know what that looks like. Ask the recruitment coordinator, where are you in this process? And how many more interviews do I honestly have to go through to get this job? Not that you're going to position it that way, but you might start feeling that way, and you need to keep those feelings under control. I'm just going on some notes here so I don't lose anything. I want to make sure I give you some value today. Certainly, if you have some contributions to add, you can put those in the comments or in the chat. Or if you have a question related to this, then certainly I'd be able to answer. And so part of that research process is doing a survey. Am I at the beginning of the process, the middle of the process, or the end of the process? And if so, what is the outcome of this interview? What can I expect the outcome of an interview, say with the CEO? What can I expect that to be? And you can do this with anyone you're interviewing with, but with the CEO, maybe it's just you're looking to build rapport or establish relationship. Maybe you're just trying to leave them with one or two salient points about you, because you may not be the only one the CEO is considering or interviewing as part of that particular job requisition process. So keep that in mind. And then any strengths during the interview process that they've affirmed. So if you're going through an interview process and you've been cognizant enough, aware enough to know that, hey, they affirmed in me this strength that they said they need. And I'm going to make sure I know what those are. And I'm going to certainly feed that back to any hiring team I'm in front of, whether that's the CEO, the recruiter, the hiring manager, whatever. I want to make sure I understand what I believe I bring to the table that they have affirmed and given me information on. And so those items that I just described, building a dossier, doing the research, doing a survey, looking at the compensation ranges and the benefits that you can find in any data out there, I don't imagine you're going to spend more than, 2 or 3 hours in that activity, prepping all that information, because once you have it, you can always add to it, but you don't need to go, Magnum PI on this person and do background checks and get credit reports. You don't have to go to that extent, but certainly if you're going for a role that is a board level position, I'd have different advice. Certainly, I'm just giving universal advice on this particular case. And then the rest of my notes just said practice. Practice. Now, you notice I didn't say put together your stories, review your resume, all these different things. No, this is an acting lesson. You are acting like a future employee, meaning I'm going to act like I'm already working there. That means I need to play the role of the person that already works there. And that takes practice. That means, if I'm going in front of a CEO, say as a board level position, I want to be known or viewed as a peer, not as a direct report. And I need to establish that I'm on the same level, relatively speaking, to that person, and that I can be that I can have a good bedside manner, that I could be, let's say, a consigliere, if you want to use that term. But you have to practice these kind of things. You can't just assume that because you've put together some stories on paper that they're going to automatically come out of the mouth in a way that you feel is appropriate. I often in my training sessions, I often talk about Tom Hanks, and I don't know why he came to mind right now. Tom Hanks, I think one of the preeminent actors, not just comedians, but actors, I think, out there. And I think back to the early days when he did a movie called, what was it? Splash. I don't know if any of you saw this with Daryl Hannah and all that. It was an okay movie. It maybe made, I don't know, $80 million total. And he was seen as kind of that slapstick comedian, really just kind of typecast in a way. And so you fast forward not 10 years, not even a decade, and he did a movie called Forrest Gump. And that movie, I think, has surpassed $800 million, 10 times, 10 times as much as Splash. Do you believe that Tom Hanks prepared 10 times as much to deliver 10 times to the audience as much? I think he did, because if you look at it, I mean, when I saw Splash, I saw Tom Hanks, that, classic Tom Hanks from Bosom Buddies, the guy on TV, super funny, right? It's just a funny guy, kind of I guess a romantic comedy to a certain extent. But, I saw Tom Hanks. Now, when I saw Forrest Gump, I saw Forrest Gump. I did not see Tom Hanks. And that, I think, takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of practice. It takes repetitions, just like any other, the 10,000 hour rule, if you want to go that far. I'm not suggesting you need 10,000 hours before an interview with a CEO. I am suggesting that learning, rehearsing, internalizing a script of some kind so that it doesn't feel scripted is just you doing the same thing you probably do when you go to the gym, right? Do you expect to go to the gym and lift the weight 3 times and be a bodybuilder? No, you have to go to the gym day in and day out for several years to get the results that many of us need. And that's just reality. And that's true not just with lifting weights, but also with your communications and your practice in terms of interviewing in front of different types of parties that are in the hiring process. That's what we're talking about here. And so practice. So by practice, I mean, first you need to practice with yourself. You can do that with a webcam. You can do it with a mirror. You can do it with your goldfish. It doesn't really matter. As long as you're doing it out loud, you can indeed do it by yourself. This is, you look at what actors do when they have a script and they're just reading through the script and thinking how they're going to deliver that line. Now, I'm not supposing you're trying to be somebody you're not. I just want you to be the best you can be to make sure that you actually get the job offer at the end of the interview. So practice with yourself. You don't have to have a partner to do that. You can activate a webcam just like I'm doing here, or your cell phone or what have you. And you could do it to a webcam. You could do it to a voice recorder. You could put on the headphones and go for a walk and listen to yourself speaking and see how you can say that a little bit better. You could also, if you know somebody inside the organization, I always suggest that there's really 2 things that define a candidate from a finalist. A candidate from a finalist. There is a difference. The finalists that I've seen have 2 things in common. First, they practice like crazy. So we're going to get to that. The second thing they have, which I'm going to talk about now, is internal champion. They have somebody on the inside that's helping them through a process. And that means that often they can get insights on the team and what challenges they're focusing on or facing. They can also get insights into the compensation salary. They know the names often, or can have visibility to the names of the hiring managers and the recruiters. There's a lot of value to knowing somebody on the inside. And, if you need help getting to those people and developing those kinds of relationships, that's my specialty. Certainly. And that's not something I advocate you do just once after you've made an application. It's something you want to do over time, whether there's an open position or not, whether or not you've applied, whether or not you even get an interview. There's nothing that should deter you from building positive relationships of trust if you feel it's in a mutual best interest. And I don't see there's any downside to that. You don't have to should I say, be the perfect person or attempt to have a perfect relationship with everybody on a hiring team at a company you want to work for. I don't imagine that's going to happen. I do suspect that there's likely 10, 15, 20 people that you could build positive relationships with, that you like to be around, that you have similar values and interests. It's one of those things where you get to decide. But in this case, we're talking internal champion. And what an internal champion can do for you is they can actually give you the inside line, and they can help you practice. Because not only may they see the compensation and everything else, they might also have access to an internal database of interview questions. And it's not uncommon that, this internal database of interview questions that people have, it is actually something that is asked of everybody. It's not, hey, you get one set of questions and this other people gets different questions. No, it's part of equal employment opportunity is the fact that HR, a lot of the HR compliance and risk says, hey, I need to ask every candidate the same questions. And there may be some varying questions there, but for the most part, there's going to be a slate of questions they have to ask everybody. There's not going to be much variance from that. Wouldn't you like to know? Wouldn't you like to know what the game plan is inside that organization? I would, absolutely. I'd want to know what that is for sure. So practice with an internal champion. Let's see. Part of your practice actually here, I wrote, this is the last thing I wrote before I went online because I thought it was so good. Know the pain. So if I'm interviewing with a CEO, that may be different than the pain that I experience when I'm, say, with a recruiter or a frontline manager, right? There may be several parties in a hiring decision. And if it's the CEO, they're likely experiencing different pain. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm suggesting that, hey, if I know what they're struggling with as an organization or as a leader, that makes me more valuable and capable of knowing how to position my skills and my strengths to meet the needs of what they have right in front of them. And that might not just make me a hire for today, but a hire for the long term. And it also might increase my compensation, right? So there's something there interesting there, that if you can be the solution to a problem or the relief to the pain, then you have an opportunity there to certainly to do that. I would do some research and some practice on that side of things, and you can certainly find a lot of that published publicly. And certainly, of course, if you need support, I do offer a interview preparation intensive service, and sometimes this works for, I would say it works for about 95% of individuals. The other 5% just needs something more. That means, hey, I've got a loop interview for an executive level board position, and I need, I probably need 6 sessions with you and a lot of support offline. Then that's a different situation altogether. So if you have extended needs, then by all means, there's an application, regardless of where you're joining, or if you're over here behind the scenes on Instagram, it's in my bio. So if you want to access the bio, you can see the application form there and fill it out. And I'd be happy to schedule time to see how we can collaborate together. So that's pretty much it. Now, I know I covered over some universal things. Certainly, I would go the extra step and say, I do have an interview checklist. It's just a little checklist to make sure that you have everything you need to be successful in an interview. And you can get that off my website, or if you want to direct message me on any of these platforms, I'm happy to send it to you. I would be happy to forward that to you. It's on my website, andrewbeach.com. You'll see a list of resources there, and you'll be able to sign up and get the interview checklist. Just pop your email in there, and I'll email it off to you. Not a problem. 100% spam-free guarantee. And you can always unsubscribe from any things that I send you. So I know how much I protect and honor my email. I just know I don't want to have that, make that same mistake with people that engage with me. Good. So that's all I have for today. I'm sure I could go neck deep inside of interviews with a CEO. But I think the challenge that a lot of us think is we psych ourselves out. We think that the CEO is this super top level person that is superhuman or something. And honestly, they're not. They're just another human being that happens to be in a position of authority or leadership that we should acknowledge, that is a human being, and they're not infallible. They make mistakes. Absolutely. They don't get to that level without making some kind of mistakes, knowing how to recover and having resilience. And we can exhibit all of those things. Not a problem. So thanks for joining me for this week's Career Happy Hour. Shout out to Jessica Bishop and Taylor Wells. Thank you for joining. Thank you for chiming in, or at least saying that you're here. And I do appreciate that. And we'll certainly see you next Friday, 3 o'clock Pacific time. Spread the news that I'm here to answer any questions that you have about leadership, career coaching, etc. Every Friday, 3 o'clock Pacific time here on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Maybe I'll try TikTok next week, see if I get more traction, but I'm here to broadcast on any channel that will have me. All right, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Career Happy Hour.